Hello, everybody. Welcome to the training on Whistler and Vancouver. My name's Michael Braben. So I work for both Destination Vancouver and Tourism Whistler here in the UK. And I'm going to quickly chat you through both destinations, starting with Whistler and then moving on to Vancouver. But we've got quite a lot to get through, so I'll get on with it. So the basics: flying from London to Vancouver. It's about a 9-hour flight time, or for me, that's 3 mini bottles of wine, 2 Jason Stathams, and a quick nap. You can get daily flights from London Heathrow into Vancouver on both British Airways and Air Canada, and that is year round. From Gatwick, there is a summer only daily flight with British Airways as well, and that goes from around mid-May through until the end of September. And for anybody who is less familiar with Air Canada, I won't talk about them too much, but I would say the interiors, the cabins of the fleet are absolutely brilliant. And if you are flying with them in winter, they also will give you free ski carriage. So you land in Vancouver. To get to Whistler, you drive through the heart of downtown Vancouver, which you can see pictured there, before you hit the Sea to Sky Highway, which takes you from the ocean of Vancouver up to the mountains in Whistler. And summer or winter, this is what that road looks like. It is absolutely spectacular, and you just cannot go to the west coast of Canada and to Vancouver without doing this section of road. It is one of the most beautiful drives in the world. And then 2 hours up the road, if you're driving, it's a simple drive, one highway pretty much outside of Vancouver up, or I would always recommend getting the transfers there and back, and you are here in Whistler, my spiritual home. Probably best known as a ski destination. So in winter, you would be skiing on both Whistler and Blackcomb Mountain. Slightly different in summer, that actually you'll mountain bike on Whistler Mountain, and then there are other activities that happen on Blackcomb. And then connecting the two mountains at the very top is the peak-to-peak gondola. So if you mountain bike, and you don't have to, down Whistler Mountain, you will find Whistler Village right at its base. So you can get the gondola up from Whistler Village and then take the peak to peak from there. At the back side of Whistler Village is a village called Village North. Now, really, you wouldn't know that you'd walk from one village to the next. It's just the next bit of Whistler Village. And then at the base of Blackcomb Mountain, there is the Upper Village. Now, this is slightly disconnected from those other two villages, but there's a little walkway. It probably takes about 5 minutes, if that, to take you from the Upper Village into Whistler Village. So really, over the summer, when ski boots aren't being worn, wherever you are, unless you've got some significant mobility issues, really you can be anywhere within these Whistler villages, and it's easy to get around. And to give you a bit of a sense of what Whistler Village looks like, here's a kind of picture of it in summer. All the shops, bars, restaurants kind of back onto the promenade. It's kind of this honeycomb that runs throughout the village. It's all completely pedestrianised. And just to give you a sense of the size, that dot there shows where we are within the village, where that picture's taken. And at the back, you can see the mountain coming down, which is around that. So this is just a really small section of Whistler Village. You can see it kind of sprawling out there. And the other thing that's worth noting is it is bustling in summer. I wouldn't use the word busy, but there's a lot going on. The mountain bikers from Canada and US are there, and everybody who's come to do that Canada road trip from further afield. So it's got a really lovely atmosphere, and the food is amazing. Everything from pub grub up to fine dining, food from every corner of the globe. And the one thing I would say is the sushi here is just incredible. You're only 45 minutes away from the coast, and that is something that I always have when I'm in Whistler. The one thing that customers tend to want to do is get up the mountain here. So the peak-to-peak gondola is obviously one of the key attractions, this 360-degree view running between the two mountains. It's worth noting, especially in early and late season during the summer, the peak to peak may not run every day, but there are other ways of getting onto the mountain. If it's not running, there are these buggies that you can do on Blackcomb Mountain, also a jeep tour to watch sunsets. There's even a zip line going between the two. But it's imperative, whoever goes to Whistler, you've got to get out on the mountains, do a short stroll, a full day hike, whatever it is. This is kind of the key reason that pulls people up the Sea to Sky Highway to Whistler. The other key reason are these guys. Now, Whistler has one of the most dense populations of black bears anywhere in Canada. And it's not uncommon to spot these guys cycling or canoeing, or whether you're walking around a lake, golfing on mountain. But the best way to see them is booking one of the sightseeing tours. But I would say always get them booked up early, because there's a few companies that do it, but there's only a certain amount of slots and they are incredibly popular. So adventuring around Whistler isn't hard. There are about 5 alpine lakes that you can jump into, kayak, canoe. And one of my favorite things about Whistler is they're so accessible. So you can walk to them, you can cycle to them to easily get there. You can adventure on ground as well. And I appreciate that many of your customers won't be racing down the mountain biking trails. But what I would say, do hire bikes. This bottom left picture is just a couple that have gone out to look around Lost Lake, which is right next to the main village. So hiring bikes and walking and getting around Whistler, I think, are an absolute must. And then I guess in some ways, Whistler's synonymous with adventure. So getting into the air, zip lining, I think, is just an incredible thing to do. As I said earlier, there's one that goes between Whistler and Blackcomb Mountain, accessible from the village. But there's also the Superfly pictured at the top there, where you actually zip next to somebody else. But if you want to go and stand up paddleboard and from a helicopter in a mountain in the middle of nowhere, do a sightseeing float plane, or even bungee jump and jump off a cliff, it's all there for you to do in Whistler. And the other thing I'd say is this will be one of the least expensive of the core destinations that you're in for while you do that Canada road trip. So it's a great place to spend a bit of extra time, relax, unwind, in the amazing spas and the scenery and the places to sit in and around Whistler. But there is always something going on. There's a festival every week. The Odeon Art Museum has an amazing collection of BC art. And then if you're after more culture, then the Squamish Lillywat Cultural Centre is right in the heart of the Whistler Villages as well, with amazing displays of First Nations art, history, culture, well worth visiting. So finally on Whistler, it is probably best known as a ski resort. It is the largest ski area in North America. It's completely ski in, ski out. It gets nearly 11 meters of snow in an average season. The après ski is phenomenal, and the winter activities are never ending. And I'm always happy if you want to get in touch to talk you through more about Whistler in winter. But for now, we will move on. We'll drive back down the Sea to Sky Highway and into downtown Vancouver. So this is what it looks like. My favorite thing about Vancouver is it's so easy to walk around. So you're about 3 kilometers from one side to the other, 40 minute walk, something like that. And I'm going to quickly do a kind of digital walking tour now around Vancouver, starting up in the north there. You can see the top, Stanley Park, which is 1,000 acres of temperate rainforest. So you could spend days looking around this forest, but most people would spend half a day or so. And I'd really recommend hiring a bike and cycling the seawall, which you can see in the bottom pictures. It's about 10 kilometers that goes around Stanley Park. So it can take a while if you hike it, but going around on bikes is just a brilliant way to spend half a day. And then we come from Stanley Park into the next bit, Cold Harbour. So that triangular jetty sticking out, that is the cruise terminal. So if you're going up the inside passage, sounds rude, it's not. That's the cruise line that will take you up to Alaska. This is where it departs from, and you can see those high rises in the back. That's where you'll be staying, even one within the cruise terminal itself. So the convenience for cruise is just so easy here. And the other thing is the sightseeing float plane tours. They cost about £100, give or take exchange rates. You depart right from the harbour there in downtown Vancouver. You get that amazing view of the skyline from the air, and you look out across the Straits and Sounds out towards Vancouver Island. It's just an amazing way to see the city. So after you've been to Cold Harbour, the next bit is Gastown and Chinatown. So Gastown is where the city began. It's the historic centre, and there is this famous gas clock that spews gas every 15 minutes or so. So you walk through there into Chinatown. There's an amazing botanical Chinese garden, and that will bring you through into the next bit, Yaletown and False Creek. That is the waterway that runs at the bottom of that picture. So Yaletown is an old warehouse district, really beautiful, amazing restaurants and bars there. But personally, I think during the day, the best way to see it is from the water. You can do some small little cruises with a dining experience if you like. But I'd say to anybody who's there, jump on the little taxi ferries. You can see one in the middle of the bottom picture there. They only cost a few bucks and they'll poodle you along. You get this beautiful view and they take you to the next bit, Granville Island. So loads going on in Granville Island. There are boutique shops, there's art studios, there's theatres, brewery, restaurants, but probably one of the biggest attractions here is the Granville Market, which has got some kind of this amazing grocery shopping. It's a bit like Waitrose on steroids, and this food hall where you can buy food from around the world. You go, sit outside with views of downtown Vancouver. There'll be a busker playing and have incredible food. This is also somewhere that you can go whale watching from. So there's a number of different places you can, and the Straits and Sounds in and around Vancouver, there are resident orca whales. They are the rebranded killer whales. So it's brilliant to go out and see those guys. Again, the summer months, there are lots of options to go and do that. Or if you wanted an otter's eye view of the city, you could even go and have a bit of a kayak. So that almost brings us full circle into the West End and downtown Vancouver. So as you would expect, amazing shopping. Robson Street is the key kind of high street retail, and then Alberni Street is all the upmarket shops. So think Burberry, Prada, Armani. Effectively any shop I can't afford to go in is there. And the other thing that you may not expect is beaches. There are about a dozen beaches around Vancouver, and this is where the locals tend to hang out if it's a really hot day, after work or on the weekend. So go down, chat to a local. They're super friendly, and it's just something nice and a bit different to do that you may not have expected. The food in Vancouver is incredible. I usually come back a 2 to 3 stone heavier, and everything from pop-ups to fine dining. Michelin have been in Vancouver for a year now. They've just come back in. There are 9 one-star Michelin restaurants, 17 Bib Gourmands, and over 50 restaurants recommended by Michelin. So the quality of food is exceptional. The other thing that's brilliant to do is one of the foodie tours. If people don't have a huge amount of time in Vancouver, this is a great way of trying lots of things in one meal time. You will not go away hungry. And it's not just about the food. The views here from many of the restaurants are spectacular too. In terms of museums, galleries and more, there are loads, as you would expect from such a big city. But the two I'd probably pick out is the Vancouver Aquarium. They've got sea otters, which are the cutest animals, and it's just an amazing aquarium. And the Museum of Anthropology at a University of BC, slightly outside of the city, but they've just done seismic renovations and such an amazing exhibition on First Nations. That is an absolute must again for people looking to get into the culture. So really, Vancouver, you need 3 to 4 nights to do that kind of downtown hub that we've talked about. 3 nights only gives you 2 days. And if you do want to venture outside, things like Capilano Suspension Bridge, it's not just a suspension bridge, it's also the Treetop Adventure, the Cantilevered Bridge. There's so many bits and pieces to do here that you'll spend half a day, you'll couple it up with Grouse Mountain, go and see the grizzly bears, incredible views out. But there are other mountains you can helicopter out to. There's so much to do here. If you've not had your ski fix in Whistler, then there's loads on the mountains that you can do in winter. And this really is a year-round destination. So that kind of brings us to the end here. And from Vancouver, you get back out. You can jump on a SkyTrain, 25 minutes. It's the quickest way of getting in and out. But if I'm honest, usually the taxis are the easiest from your customers because there's only a couple of stops with the SkyTrain. So just jump on a taxi, $40 in or out of the city, and you're there. And finally, from me, the Vancouver Specialist Program is well worth doing if you want to learn more about Vancouver. The incentives are great as well. Not only if you visit Vancouver will you get an experience pass, but there are often fam trip invitations or events within the UK you get invited to if you've done this. So finally, a big thank you from me. Feel free to press print screen now and you'll get my business cards. It's the same email address, mbrabin@tourismwhistler.com. And if you've got any questions, I'll be taking them now. So thanks again. So I'm just going to have a little look at the chat. Lots of good mornings. So morning, everybody. Yep, the answer is not Yellow Brick Road. I'll give you that much. Somebody's asking what Whistler is like in the autumn. And I mean, it's a beautiful time to be there, the autumn. As you get later into the autumn, the leaves change colour, some amazing yellows and reds that come out there. But generally, all of the activities continue going right through the autumn. As you get later on, late September, early October, this is the mountains. So dress for pretty much any weather. But it's a brilliant, brilliant time to be there just before the bears go to sleep. How easy is it to get from Granville Island from downtown Vancouver? I always would say jump on one of the little taxi ferries. They cost, I don't know, about $5, £3, something like that. And they'll pootle you around there. If not, you can actually easily walk there from downtown. It's just over the bridge. Wherever you are in downtown, it's going to take you no more than 30 minutes to wander over and get there. Or you could cycle. Personally, cycling in a city, or the Vancouverites do it, but I'd recommend walking or even jumping in a cab if you've done enough walking and your legs are feeling a bit lazy. And again, I would agree, Science World is wonderful, not just for small kids, big kids too, like me, love it. And again, I do think the aquarium is wonderful. I actually went over with my 3-year-old a year or two ago, and we hired bikes with one of those little carriages on the back that we could put her in. So we could go and explore Stanley Park and do a huge amount with kids. So even if you've got quite young kids, there's actually loads that you can still do, and they're so relaxed in Vancouver. You could take a small kid even to one of the nicer restaurants and they won't blink. Oh, somebody asking, please bring up your details again. I would say if you go to the Tourism Whistler and Destination Vancouver room within TTG Canada Fest, you'll have my email address there. You'll have the contact URLs there for both the trade sites for Whistler and Vancouver. There's loads of trade information within those. So they're really handy tips. There's sample itineraries, image libraries, you name it, it's in there. If not, like I said, my email address is there as well always feel free to get in touch if you need anything whatsoever.